Okay, so for this first section, we are discussing 7 principles of economics. This is going to be your first set of notes for Unit 1, which I consider to be kind of the foundations. The essential question says, what is economics and how can you think like an economist? If my computer will move. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so the warm up, we're not doing this obviously. This is what we would be doing in person if we were not virtual. But it says use the space in your notes to respond to the prompts below. Please write in complete sentences. The first question, what have you heard about economics? Number 2, based on your real world knowledge and past courses you've taken, what is an economy and how does it work? And number 3, what do you want to learn about economics and the economy? Maybe you have questions about the United States healthcare system. Maybe you have questions about kind of the current state that we're in. Many of you have asked questions as far as the border and immigration and how does that affect economy and why is that such a big issue right now? So that's kind of what we will also delve into during this class. So for this one, what is economics? It's all about choices. The main thing that you need to understand is that resources are limited. There are, for example, your time. You've got a limited amount of time to make decisions. Therefore, you have to kind of reason and choose the one that's better suited for your needs. Money, also a limited resource. These are things that you don't have endless supplies of money circulating around in the economy. So based on your budget, you have to come up with a budget and then make purchases based on what you can afford. Now, of course, you don't want to just spend money and run up a bunch of debt. That's bad. Okay. But economists generally study how people choose to fulfill their unlimited wants and needs during or using, these limited resources. What's the difference between micro and macroeconomics? This is something, like I said, when you get into college, you may take a micro or macroeconomics course, but we're not going to go that far in depth. Typically, these are separate courses. Microeconomics, they look at individuals, businesses, and households specifically. So remember, micro is small, mini. Macro, they look at the entire economy. So they're looking at maybe even the state of Alabama or the United States of America, the national economy. All right, so for this activity, this is just activity 1 on your notes. It says time is one of our most valuable yet limited or scarce. We'll get into scarce and scarcity resources. In the activity box, number 1, map out how you spend your time on a given weeknight. Are you happy with how you spend your extremely limited resource? Are you satisfied with yourself that you spent 12 hours watching Netflix or that you were on TikTok for 5 hours during the afternoon? Think that there could be a better use of how you spend your time. Okay. So economics versus the economy. What is the economy? You will need to know this for your test. In a given area, usually a nation, an economy describes the production, distribution, and consumption of limited resources. So again, like we said, resources are limited. So therefore, an economy, the country itself, or the private businesses, they have to make decisions of how they're going to get the most use, or how they can make their resources go the furthest based on what they have. But when we look at the economy and we talk about how the economy is doing, is it going good? Is it going bad? Are we in a recession? It's because they're looking at our production, what the economy is producing. We also look at things like amount of people who have jobs. We look at job growth. Okay, so there's all kinds of different factors that you look at for an economy to tell whether or not they're actually doing well. But main point here is that an economy is describing production, distribution, and consumption of limited resources. Activity 2. The United States has a market-based economy. We are not technically not a free market. We are called free enterprise is what we go by. In the activity box number 2, explain how you have seen production, distribution, and consumption of goods working in the U.S. Or how do you think that they work in the U.S.? Production, distribution, and consumption. Do you think our economy works well? So within our economy, we have various sectors. We have the private sector and the public sector. Private sector are things that are, owned by individuals that are not open to the general public. When we talk about the public sector, you're looking at things like, government funded operations or government produced goods. Okay, so think about the private sector and think about how things are produced in the United States. We can even talk about the pandemic, for example. What have you noticed about the vaccine distribution? What have you noticed about, mass distribution? Uh, let's go ahead and point out that a lot of these items are not actually made in the United States anymore. Most of them have been outsourced to other countries for cheap labor. So, for example, at the very start of the pandemic, you had a mask shortage because the hospitals were trying to use, they can't use it more than once. When they're on the hospital, they have to use separate PPE. But they kind of ran into a problem, the United States did, because all of this stuff was being made over in China. Well, where does the virus come from, or where did it come from? It's China. So they were having to now ship this stuff to the United States, but because the virus was coming from China, they'd actually put a, kind of a halt on what could be sent out, had to be quarantined for a certain amount of time before it could actually be distributed to the public. So then it creates a shortage. This has kind of caused a big stir in the United States economy because it's really kind of opened our eyes to the fact that if we did ever go through something like this again, it would be a problem. Even if you consider medication, for example, a lot of that stuff is made in other countries. The United States doesn't really produce a whole lot anymore, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. So the 7 principles of economics. The first one that you need to understand is scarcity forces trade-offs. So scarcity, what is scarcity? When an item is scarce, it means all resources are limited. Because all resources are limited, that means that you have to make decisions. You have to make choices every time that you are trying to get something or, have access to a scarce item, because obviously you don't have the resources to do both. So, if you need a new car, well, you're going to have to budget your time. You're going to have to budget your money because you have to be able to make a car payment every month. You also have to make sure that you have some sort of down payment to your car, typically because you want your payments to be low and you want your interest rate to be lower. If you have a poor credit score, then you will not, you'll have to pay a higher interest rate because it's a loan. So these are all things, you have to consider. Some of you right now are in that situation where you're trying to figure out where you want to go to college. So what are the things you look at? You look at your pros and your cons. Are you trying to be on a sports team? Are you trying to go there just for academics? You have to look at in-state versus out-of-state tuition. You have to consider where you're going to live. Are you going to live on campus? Is it something they require? Are you going to get an apartment? So based on your resources, because all resources are limited, you have to then make trade-offs. How does scarcity force trade-offs? Since all resources are scarce, people and society must make choices that force them to make trade-offs. The quote that I've always heard in my household, and this is what's here, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? So every choice requires trade-offs. Whenever we talk about, for example, this idea of free healthcare, free college, free anything, somebody is paying for it. And especially when you're focusing on free healthcare or free college, as far as the United States goes, that falls back on the American taxpayer. And we get into that discussion, or we will get into that discussion during this class, of who are the taxpayers, how many taxpayers do we have, and how much are we actually spending versus what we are making as far as our tax dollars goes. So that is a very interesting discussion, and we talked about government, and these things do overlap with each other, so you will kind of see things and understand it now on the other end. Activity 3, in choosing to come to class today, you made trade-offs. In the activity box 3 lists 5 trade-offs you made to learn about economics in this class today. Are you aware of the daily trade-offs you make? Some of you might have decided that this might have been the first time you've woken up this morning because you've been asleep. You slept in. So you chose to wake up and come to class. You could have gotten a couple more hours of sleep, depending on what your schedule is today. Some of you may have gone ahead and done the notes the night before, and you are ready to discuss, or you don't have to really do too much. You're just going to listen to me talk. Great. Okay, so these are some trade-offs that you made, because obviously you could have used your time for something else, but you made that choice. Principle number 2, cost versus benefits. What are costs and benefits? Costs are what you spend when you make a choice. For example, time, money, resources. Those are things that you've given up. But also benefits are also time, money, and resources. Things that you gain when you make a choice. For some of you, You might decide, at the end of the year, you may decide that you don't want to go straight into college. You may decide that you want to go and start enroll in the fall semester and not summer classes. Well, if you choose to do that, you could get a job and you could actually make money, instead of taking your classes. Now, what is the cost? The cost is you are potentially, not going to graduate at a specific time that you kind of, had in mind for yourself. Because let's be honest, nobody really graduates in 4 years unless you're taking the max load of classes and you have to take summer classes. But I'm not trying to rush you to do this. You're not on a schedule. You're not going to technically be behind anybody. Now, obviously, if you choose not to, take that summer job, if you choose not to take the summer off and you actually go straight into college, then you could potentially graduate a little bit sooner than your peers, and maybe you could actually get into your career position a little bit sooner. So it's really just up to you what you think is most beneficial to your life and what you need at the time. What is the cost versus benefits principle? So when you make a choice, it's always because people think consciously or subconsciously that the benefits outweigh the cost. Obviously, you want to make the best decision for you and your needs. Um, for example, I don't drive a brand new car. I don't drive, a car that's even 5 years old. My car is a little bit older now. Now, obviously, you would think, well, Miss Dunn, why don't you just buy a new car? Well, for my family and my needs right now, it's not, at the forefront, because for me, the benefits of not having a car payment outweigh the costs of the new car. Okay, so the benefits for me are that obviously I have a son now, a baby that I have to pay daycare for, so I have to, determine what's best for our budget. And when you get out of your mom and dad's house and you start living on your own, you're going to have to start budgeting your money because you only have limited amounts. Okay, what is a cost benefit analysis? It's listing out the cost and benefits of a decision and then making a choice. So some of you may do a cost benefit analysis chart. Especially if you consider colleges, you might want to go ahead and put that on a graph or a little chart like that where you can look at the pros and cons and then help make your decision of where you think is the best college for you. Activity 4. Cost and benefits involved in going to college are significant. In Activity Box 4, make a cost-benefit analysis for attending college and getting a 4-year degree. Is going to college worth the benefits? And that's a big discussion right now because is it necessary to go to a 4-year college? Is it better off to go to a 2-year college? Well, I firmly believe that depending on this, the type of diploma, the type of certification you're trying to achieve, 4-year colleges are not always best. There are people who come out of high school and they go into some sort of trade school, get their 2-year certificate. They're making more money than I am, with a master's degree. So these are things that you need to consider. What is the best career path for you? College is not for everybody, and it's not always the answer. Principle 3, thinking at the margin. What is a margin? The margin is the outside edge or border. So if you consider the piece of paper in the top right-hand corner, we have the margins. Remember up top, your teachers would always say, don't write in the margin or out to the left side, okay? I don't know why it's making me do that. Okay, marginal benefit. That's what you gain by adding 1 unit of something. For example, time. If you add just a little bit more time, what are your benefits going to be? Marginal cost, what you lose by adding 1 unit of something. So if you give up some time, what are you gonna lose? Okay. What is thinking at the margin? It's considered the marginal cost and benefit involved in making a decision. For example, considering the marginal cost and benefit of consuming 1 more boba. Okay, how many of you know what boba drinks are? Personally, I've never had one. I think they're a lot of sugar. Thinking at the margin with your time can change your life. In the Activity Box 5, use the chart to think at the margin regarding how you spend your time after school. How should you spend your limited hours after school? Principle 4, incentives matter. What is an incentive? Something that motivates a person to act in a certain way. For many of you, you're incentivized to do something based on money, okay? Because a lot of you who have jobs, you're not going to just work anywhere. You think that your time is more valuable than that, and you know that you want to get paid for, for your efforts. Another incentive for you to do good work in class, I've noticed that When y'all come to class, you pay attention. If I offer bonus points on something, that will incentivize you to work a little bit harder. Of course, as seniors, there's not too much left that I can offer anymore because most of you are just so ready to be done. For example, your parents or guardians offered to pay $50 per A you get the semester. The money is an incentive to work hard in your classes. Some of you also, your parents will say, okay, well, if you get good grades on your report card, then I will help you finance a car. All right, so why do incentives matter? Incentives motivate our behavior, whether we realize it or not. In general, people respond to incentives in predictable ways. When we talk about incentives, we will get a little bit further into, the clothing market, or even, just commerce and trade, because many of you, if you notice that there is a sale going on with clothes or something like that, then you'll be more prone to go and spend your money. It's actually been proven before that some of the Black Friday sales that you'll see after Thanksgiving, most of those prices were actually a little bit higher. I'm sorry, a little bit, a little bit higher a couple weeks before. Um, and they mark them down, but they're not drastically different. It's not like a huge, huge discount. It's just because most people don't pay too much attention to the prices. You think that you're getting a good deal, but you're not. And also, you've also got spring versus summer, for example. They'll usually put out, the new stuff, and that'll be marked up really high, but they have seasonal differences for clothing. So in the off season, things are marked down. You just have to kind of pay attention. But marketing is really just a game. Okay. When they market a price or a certain item to you as a consumer, obviously they're trying to get you to buy it. Same thing with advertising. So they're trying to incentivize you to spend your money to purchase that item. Activity 6, recognizing and using incentives is a powerful tool to understanding human behavior. For example, scenario, you need tutoring for economics class. You know your friend Andrea could help you, but she needs an incentive. In the activity box 6, brainstorm 5 incentives you could give Andrea to tutor you. What incentives do people/authority figures in your life use to influence how you act? For some of you, your mother disciplines you, or your father. Okay, and that is the way that they will try to influence you on how to act. Principle 5, trade makes people better off. What is trade? Trading is a voluntary exchange of goods. For example, you trade 10 cents for a pencil. I don't charge 10 cents, I charge 50 cents because, supply and demand. How does trade make people better off? We trade because it's inefficient to make everything we need. And when we say inefficient, again, you're trying to make the most of your time and your resources. You want to make sure that whatever you have goes the furthest. You can get the most for your money, get the most for your time. For me, as a producer and consumer, it makes no sense for me to try to go and spend a whole week of my time growing my vegetables in the backyard when I could go up to Walmart or Publix and buy them. I do not have time for that. I do not have the resources for that. So it's more efficient for me to trade my money for the vegetables that I need for my family. So it's a trade. Okay. And where do we do that? We do that at the market. Walmart is also a market. Anywhere where you're exchanging goods and services, you're exchanging resources for goods and services, that is a market. So for example, it says you specialize in making pencil pouches. Someone else specializes in making pencils. You trade each other for what you need. Everyone is better off. Trade allows certain people or countries to specialize and then trade for what they need/want. Obviously, you don't want everybody making the same thing because that's inefficient. So you pick up on people's skill sets, and therefore you can go and get what you need, based on what they can provide. Activity 7, in your future career, you will specialize in helping create a good or service and then trade, probably money, for what you can't produce or won't produce yourself. In activity box 7, record the good or service you'll likely contribute to creating. Write down 10 things you'll trade to obtain. depending on what you think that you want to do after high school. Are you going into the workforce? Are you going to college? If you are going to college, what specific degree are you seeking? What would you like to do, as your career job? And then how do you think, like, what are you going to have to give up to get that position? Now, obviously, you're going to have to give up some of your time. You're going to have to give up some of your money for sure. But what else are you going to have to give up? You have to think pretty hard about that. For some of you, you might have to give up relationships. I'm going to be honest, because a lot of you, a lot of people say that you probably shouldn't be dating while you're in certain programs. Like if you're in medical school, good luck trying to, date anybody. Okay. It's very tough, okay, because you're so focused on achieving your goal that you don't have time to actually spend and give to the other person like they deserve. So think about that, answer that question. How will trading for goods and services make you better off? Okay, depending on what your goal is in the long run, you have to consider these things. Principle 6, markets facilitate trade. What is a market? A market is a space where buyers and sellers trade or do business. So, for example, I just talked about Walmart or Publix. Now, those are stores, but they are also markets where people buy and sell. Okay, so when I go to the grocery store and purchase my groceries, I am buying goods from Publix. Okay, so I'm trading my money for those food items. How do markets facilitate trade? In a marketplace with limited government intervention, buyers and sellers are free to conduct trade. Now, Publix is a private business. It is not owned by the United States government, so therefore they are able to set their prices. So I am not free to just negotiate. I'm not going to go in there and try to haggle over an apple, okay, or haggle over my coffee creamer. Can't do that. But that just means that buyers and sellers are free to conduct trade, their own decisions on how they're going to trade based on the market or the actual marketplace that they're in. Okay. Now, the government does have certain interventions because think about the people who work at Publix. They do have minimum wage, for example. That is a government mandated or a government, a legal government intervention. Okay, so they're trying to make sure that the workers are paid a certain amount of money per hour because we, have laws against that. We'll go into that a little more in depth. In this type of marketplace, the buying and selling of goods and services is naturally efficient. Adam Smith, you have an assignment to do about Adam Smith. He describes the efficiency of free markets as the invisible hand guiding buyers and sellers. So when we say the invisible hand, the efficiency of free markets, the point is that the markets drive the prices, the market keeps the prices down. When you start to try to regulate the market, as the government does many times, that will actually increase prices. For example, many of you have asked me, why is college so expensive? Okay? Now, this is a very complicated topic, so I'm going to try to say this pretty quickly, but college is very expensive. It did not used to be as expensive as it was now. However, you did not have everybody trying to go to college, therefore the prices were a little bit lower. When demand goes up, prices go up because the colleges know they can make money off of you. Another issue that we have, student loans. The government has a student loan program, okay, where if you apply based on your need, you will receive that money. Well, who do you think controls the price of entering college? It's not the government. It's the individual colleges themselves, the private colleges. So they set the prices and they increase yearly depending on their enrollment and also, how much they know that they were going to get from the federal government. Okay, they make money that way. So that is something that has really affected how expensive colleges are, and it's a problem. Now, if the government were to get out of that, leave it alone, it would regulate itself, okay? Because then, first of all, I know a lot of people will say, well, that'd be less people that go to college. True. But that means that now college would be, more, it'd regulate based on supply and demand. The demand would go down. Therefore, the cost of college would also go down, okay? We'll get into more of that later. Activity 8, you benefit from markets facilitating trade every day. In Activity Box 8, record 10 items that you or your parents/guardians buy every month. What were they produced? Sorry, where were they produced? Why does the store sell these goods/services? So there are certain things that, you buy every month. For example, one of them for me is coffee creamer. You'll know I'm very specific about that. I also have to have my coffee. So coffee creamer and coffee are things that I buy every month. Okay. Toilet paper, gotta have it. Laundry detergent, gotta have it. Okay. Those are some items that I have to have. For me right now, formula, baby formula, gotta have it. Diapers, yes. Okay. Where were they produced? Well, it depends. If you look on the labels on some of these, you've noticed that a lot of the stuff, like I said, is made in China. I'm looking at my coffee creamer right now. Where was this made? Arlington, Virginia. Well, that's where it was distributed. I don't know where it was actually made. I'm going to have to look this up. The logo was made in Switzerland. So that's okay. I'll have to go into this a little more in depth. I don't really look at where this stuff is coming from. But anyway, most of this stuff is on your label. You just need to look at it. Why does the store sell these goods and services? Well, there is a demand for them. Okay. Whenever you have a city or a town and you have a pretty large amount of people living there, you want to make sure that you have a wide array of items that are necessary. Okay. How do you benefit from market facilitating trade? Well, it gives me a place to go to get my groceries. Obviously, it would be more efficient for me to purchase than to try to produce coffee creamer myself. It also would be more efficient for me to, purchase the diapers because I am never going to ever do cloth diapers. You can Google that yourself. Cloth diapers. Principle 7, future consequences matter. Why do future consequences matter? When we make decisions, the effects or consequences are far-reaching. A choice we make today may impact us or other people in the long run. And so a lot of people have been discussing the stimulus check, or stimulus package that was recently passed by Biden. If you look at the components of that bill, or that was now passed, it includes a lot of things that are kind of frightening as far as your generation goes, and even your children, that they will be paying this thing off for a while. The debt in the United States has gotten so bad that at this point it probably will never be able to be paid off unless something really drastic happens. But the implications for what this is going to do for you and for your children, for my son, is kind of frightening. Okay. That means that taxes could be a lot higher because they're going to have to pay back these large interest rates. They're going to have to cut costs in other areas, and that could affect you as a citizen. Also, if you consider the current immigration issue, that's also something to think about. Okay. These things will all affect you as you get older. Who knows if you'll even have access to Social Security? Who knows? But these are all future consequences of current decisions. In Activity 9, future consequences should be considered when making a decision. Scenario, you decide to spend your entire paycheck on expensive concert tickets instead of a cheap car. In Activity Box 9, record at least 5 future consequences of your decision. How do future consequences impact your life? For many of you, choosing the right college is very important. Choosing to go to school and take out student loans is also very important. Considering the current economy within the United States and the current level of federal debt, I would be very nervous to take out a huge amount of student loans. You don't know what the interest rates are going to be like later on. You also don't know what the job market is going to be like later on. You have to consider how you're spending your money for what degree you're trying to get, because you obviously want to make sure that the degree that you receive, that you'll be able to get a job in it later on. And you don't know what that's going to look like 10 years from now. The United States could completely outsource your job to another country, and it would make your degree irrelevant. So these are things you have to think about. My dad always told me, whenever you move to a new city, what are things that are always going to be there? You got kids, okay? People are having babies. You got to have teachers. You got houses. What do you need to have for houses? You got to have electricians. You got to have plumbers, okay? If you have grocery stores, you're going to have some truck drivers to drive the stuff back and forth. You need doctors, you need lawyers, nursing, anything, hospital related. A lot of these positions you need to think about, are they going to be permanent? Are they going to be going away soon? So consider all these things. This is all I have for section 1.